A security camera caught a white Vauxhall Corsa leaving the parking lot during the early morning hours. The solo driver seemed to be a man who was keeping his head down. Phoenix Spencer Horne's car, bearing a plate from 2021, was still there, marking the last confirmed sighting of her. Phoenix was a beloved young woman hailing from East Kilbride, Scotland. She worked at a quaint hotel and cafe where her warm and gentle personality shone through. She once confided in someone that her boyfriend was the love of her life. Her boyfriend, a 27-year-old laborer, shared a modest ground-floor apartment with her. Neighbors reported hearing unusual sounds that night, including the sounds of an argument followed by an eerie silence on the chilling night of November 16, 2024. Phoenix failed to show up for work or call her mother, which was unlike her. As the day unfolded, her family and friends became increasingly worried, but the only replies they received were curt, harsh text messages that didn't sound like her at all kept coming for 2 days. The apartment remained quiet with the curtains drawn tightly closed. Only faint beams of light filtered through the cracks. By the third morning, a strange smell began to seep out as Methvin exited the apartment holding Phoenix's car keys. His face was expressionless, devoid of any emotion. What truly transpired behind that closed door? Where had Phoenix gone? And was her absence just a mere trip? Or was something far more sinister hidden within that hush? Phoenix had worked a late shift at the Strathaven Hotel on the night of November 16, 2024. Her mother received a short text from her that said, "I'll call you tomorrow." That message would turn out to be the last communication she ever had with her daughter. Around 9 p.m., Phoenix returned to the ground-floor apartment she shared with her boyfriend in a peaceful neighborhood of East Kilbride. Neighbors noted that the living room lights remained on unusually late that night, only to suddenly turn off around midnight. Once the apartment went dark, unsettling noises began to resonate through the stillness. Investigators would later conclude that around 12 a.m. was likely the moment of significance. There were no outcries or loud crashes, just hours of chilling quiet. Yet someone from the apartment above reported hearing running water and the sound of something heavy being dragged across the floor as if a large item was being moved. Early the next morning, security footage captured Methvin driving Phoenix's car out of the parking lot. He was wearing her jacket over his own. The hood was pulled up, yet his expression appeared somewhat somber. The camera still captured his face clearly over the next 2 days. He was seen alone at gas stations, grocery stores, and a pharmacy, always by himself with no sign of Phoenix anywhere. Friends became increasingly anxious. Phoenix had never ignored her phone or missed a shift at the cafe, yet this time she did both. When a close friend texted her, the reply felt off. "I need a break. Everything is okay." Phoenix almost never replied that quickly, and she definitely didn't use odd punctuation. Her family collectively agreed the message didn't sound like her at all. By the afternoon of November 18th, a strange odor began wafting through the apartment hallway. A concerned neighbor knocked on the door, but it was locked from the inside. Tension grew in the building when an ambulance passed without stopping. Around the same time, a woman in the adjacent building spotted Methvin from her balcony. He sat there motionless, gazing blankly into the distance. While holding a nearly empty bottle of wine, everyone in the neighborhood felt on an edge, uncertain about what was going on. When the officers first arrived for a welfare check, they had to force the door open, fearing someone inside might be unwell. However, before they could make a move, Methvin suddenly appeared at the entrance of the building. He didn't say a word. He merely stared at them. One of the young officers later described the encounter as disturbing. It felt as if Methvin had just come back from a place that no one should ever visit. What horrors had unfolded within those 4 walls? In a chilling twist, it wasn't the victim's mother or a neighbor who alerted the authorities. Methvin was the first to notify the authorities. He endured almost 2 days inside an apartment saturated with the odor of death. On the morning of November 18th, 2024, he finally emerged and dialed 911. His voice on the recording came across as flat and devoid of emotion. It was nothing like someone who had just carried out a crime or stumbled upon a tragedy. The operator later confessed that his tone sent chills down her spine. Upon arrival, officers found Methvin already waiting at the entrance of the building. He didn't attempt to escape or put up any resistance. However, he displayed no emotion either. He held the keys loosely in his grasp, his eyes lacking luster and his face blank. Inside the apartment, there were no signs of a struggle, nor was there any proof that someone had broken in. The place was largely undisturbed. Dishes and silverware were still neatly arranged on the table, and half a glass of red wine sat untouched on the stove. Everything felt disturbingly orderly, but that unsettling calm shattered the instant officers entered the bedroom. Phoenix's body had been brutally dismembered. Left scattered on the floor among blood-soaked garments, her head had been deliberately placed to the side. Mark suggested the perpetrator had attempted but failed to completely remove her limbs. The room wasn't chaotic. The only significant blood pool lay beneath the bed. There were no drag marks, no blood leading into the hallway. Phoenix's phone was discovered on the table, and before her demise, she had managed to type a message containing merely 2 words. So terrified she never got the chance to send it. When interrogated, Methvin provided no helpful information. He constantly asserted that he couldn't recall anything, claiming his mind felt clouded. Initially, some officers speculated that drugs might have caused a violent episode, but phone records quickly dispelled that notion. Data retrieved from Phoenix's phone revealed a sequence of messages sent to her mother after Phoenix had already passed. The texts were disjointed, oddly spaced, and entirely lacking emotion. Most crucially, they didn't resemble Phoenix in the slightest. Her family instantly recognized that the tone and style were nowhere near her typical writing. Piece by piece, the alarming details began to fit together: undelivered messages, unsettling responses, and a crime scene that was unsettlingly pristine. Gradually, the whole picture began to unravel. The deranged killer persona Methvin attempted to construct was no accident. It was intentional, a scheme built on careful planning, clean-up emotional manipulation, and precise timing. No one could have anticipated that the seemingly innocent text messages would become the first clues, uncovering the true nature of the man she once referred to as her soulmate. At first glance, the scene appeared unusually serene. There were no indications of forced entry, no broken glass, no furniture upended. Phoenix's bedroom was immaculate, almost unnaturally so. Yet it was that very cleanliness that unveiled the truth. Forensic specialists quickly detected that this wasn't the result of a struggle. It was an apartment cleaned with such precision that nearly every trace of the crime had been eradicated. The space beneath the bed was the only area initially missed. There, investigators found a long trail of blood concealed beneath a thin layer of dust. It seemed as if someone had tried to drag a heavy object in the same direction where Phoenix's body was ultimately discovered, implying she had been moved post-mortem. A single disposable latex glove that did not belong to the victim was located on the floor behind a cabinet. Intense soap used less than 6 hours prior was still detectable in the bathroom. The horrifying truth gradually came to light. Once Phoenix's body was sent for an autopsy, it was established that she had died around 12 a.m. 6 hours after Methvin had made his vague and misleading report on November 17th, it was concluded that Phoenix's neck had been strangled with such force that she had little chance to fight back. Her arms bore no cuts or bruises, and there were no indications of a struggle. It appeared she may have been struck from behind or was unconscious during the attack, something clutched in her hand. There was a small strand of black hair that didn't belong to her. Forensic experts also found human tissue beneath her toenails which matched Methvin's DNA. These hints, including the concealed gloves, the partial trail of blood, and the meticulous way she was strangled, didn't point to a spur-of-the-moment action. Rather, they indicated a deliberate, methodical murderer, someone who had meticulously planned the crime and cleaned the scene with astonishing skill. However, there was one minor detail that remained. The forensic team couldn't initially clarify. The victim's left wrist showed a faint scratch, a small detail that didn't make sense at first, but would later become clearer as more evidence came to light. From the outset, the police had established that Methvin was the last person to interact with Phoenix. He not only lived with her, but was also the one who alerted the authorities. A gesture that seemed responsible, yet seemed a bit rehearsed. Investigators recognized that a confession doesn't always tell the entire story. They had encountered this issue before. It was the questionable chain of events that sparked further suspicions. In this scenario, Methvin asserted that they had quarreled and that Phoenix had threatened to leave him for good, causing him to lose control. Yet whenever anyone pressed him about the time of the incident, he routinely avoided the question. At times, Methvin claimed the events unfolded late at night. At other occasions, he said they occurred early in the morning. An officer observed his evasive behavior. He avoided eye contact, licked his lips, and swiftly changed the topic, all occurring unconsciously. Rather than confronting him directly, the police employed psychological techniques, presenting him with evidence instead of asking direct questions like showing him CCTV footage of Phoenix's car leaving the parking lot. During the early morning hours, Methvin faltered when asked, "Do you recall who was driving the car?" He replied, "I think it was me, but I can't remember where I went." His reply raised serious concerns, especially since he had been messaging Phoenix's mother to extend comfort at the same time. A crucial piece of evidence soon emerged. Methvin had stated he called the police the next morning after discovering his body, yet officers found a photo of Phoenix's lifeless body on his phone, taken at 2:00 a.m., hidden away in a folder. There was no denying that he not only knew what had occurred, but had also attempted to document the horrifying act for motives that remain unclear. Behavioral specialists were consulted, and they deduced that Methvin didn't seem genuinely distressed. Rather, he was carefully cultivating the persona of a grieving boyfriend, hiding his guilt behind a mask of false emotion. During the interrogation, a veteran detective posed what seemed like a trivial question. "Did you notice a small knife while you were cleaning the blood off the floor?" Methvin responded reflexively. Somehow the mention of the black-handled knife, which had never been discussed before, slipped out. The room fell silent in shock. Slowly, the carefully constructed facade began to unravel layer by layer. Concurrently, forensic findings intensified the doubts. Phoenix had been slain from behind, which clarified why Methvin's DNA was discovered under her fingernails. Police also found a paper bag in the garbage behind the apartment containing long strands of hair matching Phoenix's. There were no signs of a struggle. Rather, the scene indicated prolonged, methodical, and intense control. Investigators uncovered numerous old text messages where Phoenix attempted to break up with Methvin, only for him to reply with threats. "If you leave, I don't know what I'll do." The breakthrough came unexpectedly from a neighbor's old security camera. The elderly man had always been concerned about security, but nobody had paid much attention to it. At 3:00 a.m., the footage captured Methvin carrying a large bag from his apartment to his vehicle. His hunched position and the way he purposely dodged the camera directly contradicted his claims of sitting still, at home in shock. The timeline of events became clearer. After taking Phoenix's life, Methvin lingered in the apartment. After showering and tidying up, he began plotting his next moves, driving around, sending misleading texts, and getting rid of the murder weapon. Sometimes he would stop at gas stations. Other times he remained in his car, scrolling through his phone or even watching explicit content. When asked about these actions, he dismissed them with a shrug, stating, "I can't control myself." What might have seemed insignificant turned into key evidence: wet shoes discovered in his vehicle and GPS data from his phone. This data indicated that he had driven to a muddy spot along the Clyde River early that morning. As police dug deeper, they found a blood-stained cloth, along with a torn piece of a medical waste bag, both containing DNA that matched Phoenix's. The fabricated claims, blood traces, and footage from a neighbor's security camera all contributed to reconstructing a calculated, methodical crime. Methvin remained composed throughout. He had meticulously planned each action, weaving a narrative of innocence that was so convincing it deceived everyone at first. Yet no plan is perfect, and even the most elaborate crimes can be uncovered by a single mistake caught on camera. On June 17, 2025, both you and Methvin were officially charged with first-degree murder and attempted obstruction of justice. The trial commenced at Glasgow High Court, attracting international attention due to the shocking nature of the crime and the chilling demeanor of the defendant. The judge observed as Methvin entered the courtroom, his face pale and eyes vacant, as if he no longer believed the tale he had been spinning. In a startling twist, he retracted all his earlier statements. He stopped asserting his innocence and confessed, "I didn't mean to kill her. All I could do was hold on to her." He then proceeded to attribute his actions to drugs, cocaine, and overwhelming emotions. Methvin insisted that the injuries had stemmed from fear, not malice or regret. The courtroom was not just shocked, it was utterly astonished. How could someone meticulously clean up the blood, send fake texts, hide the hair in the trash, and then spend hours in a car watching explicit content? The contradiction was nearly unbelievable. If there was any doubt, the evidence was clear: the bagged hair, the phone, the images of the body, the DNA found under Phoenix's nails, chemical residues in the bathtub, and the series of fake text messages, all captured on surveillance footage, indicated that this was not a sequence of random actions. Every step had been carefully strategized and carried out. In the end, the prosecutor made a point that, while someone might lose control for a fleeting moment, they cannot remain in that state for 48 hours. Throughout that entire span, Methvin's mind was lucid enough to clean the crime scene, send deceptive texts, and lie under oath. The defense struggled to counter this. They tried to argue that Methvin had a history of psychosis, depression, and substance abuse, but the meticulously chronicled timeline left little room for doubt. However, as the prosecution highlighted, mental illness does not excuse violent crime. Methvin hadn't lost his grip. He simply didn't fit into society. A crucial moment arose during the trial when one of Phoenix's old friends took the stand. She recalled receiving a text from Phoenix's number just hours after her death and asserted right away that it wasn't her friend's voice. Her voice shook as she spoke. It was chilling, detached, and lacking emotion. The messages themselves appeared as though they had been typed by someone else, a minor detail that held significant importance. That moment dealt a devastating blow to Methvin's pretense. He lowered his head, clenched his hands, and avoided eye contact with everyone in the courtroom. The verdict was announced on July 14, 2025. Life imprisonment with a minimum of 23 years before eligibility for parole. The courtroom fell silent. Methvin exhibited no panic, anger, or remorse. He merely accepted the sentence as if it had been destined all along. A choked sob resonated from the family's section, prompting many to weep upon hearing the heartbreaking story. Some demanded the death penalty, while others quietly slipped away. Unable to endure it any longer, one undeniable truth lingered: taking a life is an undeniably cruel act. Regardless of the divisions in opinion, and regardless of the justifications a criminal may provide, there's no escaping the repercussions of one's actions. Phoenix Spencer Horne lost her life at only 21 years old. She had a shining smile and aspirations she still yearned to fulfill, aspirations that were tragically cut short. Her passing didn't simply terminate a life, it snuffed out a promising future. Friends and family were left heartbroken. The town still struggles to heal from the aftermath. If you find this case intriguing, remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel. We upload crime case videos each night. Until next time, stay alert, stay aware.